You learned the basics of Revit family creation in our previous video. Now it's time to level up. In the second video of BIM Depot's 5-part beginner series on Revit family creation, we're diving into parameters, how to make your family smarter, cleaner, and more flexible with just a few key tools. I'll show you how to use instance versus type parameters, build formulas, control visibility, and even introduce shared parameters. These are the tools that make families actually useful in a real project and separate amateurs from the pros. And if you'd rather skip the trial and error, BIM Depot has ready-to-use families built with these best practices baked in. Let's get started. So hopping in from where we last left off, we have our simple geometric cube. And if you missed this, there is a part 1 video that you should watch on how to get to this level. So first off, let's go ahead and adjust some of the best practices here. So you'll notice that this is called family 1. So Revit just gives the generic family 1, 2, 3, and so on once you create a family. If we want to change the name of this, you can come down under families. Let's go down to our category, click generic models, family 1, so here it is. Let's right click on that and click rename, and then let's call this generic cube. So I always encourage people to name their families. So the way that I normally do it, I will do rename GM. So essentially I just do the initials for whatever the category is. This just is a good way of sorting things, and then it also just lets people know what it is. And then I always put the back end here _BD. So this is really just to identify it. All right, this is a BIM Depot family. This is good for everyone's use if they're looking for a specific family by BIM Depot, but you can do your company's initials. So, whatever you guys normally do for an abbreviation, that'll let everyone know that this is created by your firm. So now that we have rename this. So if we want to edit this, there's a few ways we can do it. This is an advanced parameter video, so let's go ahead and start talking about the more advanced features of parameters. So if we come back in and we want to modify this length parameter, let's go ahead and hit edit parameter, the little pencil icon. So now you notice we have this same box from video 1. We have type and instance here. So to explain these a bit, a type parameter is really going to be controlled within the type level. So what that means for the project space, if you select on your family, click edit type, and then we modify this here, click OK. You'll notice that height changed. So if we copy this over a few times, and then we go ahead and click edit type again, edit this down to 4 feet, we click apply, you'll notice that it applied to all the instances of this family. So you're really controlling at a higher level. What an instance-based parameter is, so if we come back in, edit the parameter, click instance, click OK. Let's go ahead and load this back into the project. So now if we click on our family in a plan view, you'll now notice that we have these little arrow grips, and we can slide it to change the length of the box here. But you will notice that there are no grips on the width side. So the left and right hand side, no grips. And that's really because that's a type parameter. This is an instance parameter. And you'll also notice that if we take measurements here, you'll notice that each of the lengths, the length parameter on all of these boxes, they're all different. So this one's about 5, 3 foot, and 10 foot. But then if we take a measurement on the width, all of them are 7 feet and can only be 7 feet within this type. So really that instance parameter, that's giving you the ability to control this, based on a particular instance, a particular version of that. So this is helpful in so many different cases. So think of like a wall opening. You might want to customize it to align with other walls. If you had expandable tables or expandable room dividers, I mean, it's really endless. And you see this a lot kind of just throughout Revit families, just, created by anyone. So that's really the main benefit. And so you don't have to create a new type every time that you want custom size length here. So that's not to say that type parameters are bad. You just have to use them in the right use case. So now let's say that we wanted to, create a family that we can then reference within a schedule. So let's go ahead and create a new schedule. And you'll notice that if we create this new schedule, there is no height, length, and width. So there's some other parameters I think it's not associated with our family. And you can tell that because there's an underscore here. We didn't put an underscore. So if we come down, there's no length here, there's no width, and then no height either. So the reason that we can't show within the schedule what that is because they're not shared parameters. So what a shared parameter is, it's really useful for if something you want to schedule, you can kind of reference that across, the family to your Revit project. To start using shared parameters, go to Manage, Shared Parameters, and then it'll ask you for a shared parameter file. So Your firm might already have one of these. If not, you can create one by clicking create and then adding it here. I already have one made through BIM Depot, so let's go ahead and load that. So once you have your shared parameter file, click open, and you will notice that you have loads of different options here. So I created these parameter groups. A group is essentially just like a folder for organizing purposes. Let's go ahead to dimensions, or let's go down. So I have loads of different ones loaded here. So let's actually start to use some of these. So within our type dialog box, let's go ahead and click on width, edit, and then here, let's click on shared parameters, select. So all the way down, let's click on our width, and then let's click OK. And we'll do this for the other ones. So now we've converted all of these from just a regular parameter, family parameter, to a shared parameter. Let's go ahead and load this back into the project. So now when we select these and go edit type, you'll notice that now we have our shared parameters that we uploaded. And now if we go back to create a new schedule, so now we'll see BD height, length, and width. So let's go ahead and load all those in. And then we can also say family type. Click OK. And now you'll notice that we have all instances of our object here. So it's going to give us our height, length, and width. If we change that, it's going to change here. So let's go ahead and change the height. If we change the height here, click apply, you'll notice that it changed within our schedule. So that's really the most powerful portion of shared parameters when you're using it with families. So getting back into our type creator, so I went ahead and made this type parameter again. Let's say you always want your box to be a square. So what we can do here is start to use this formula column. We can go here, we can copy BD underscore width, click enter, or paste it into our formula. You'll notice that BD length now 7 feet. So if we change this, it's going to automatically change it to match BD width. So essentially these two are equivalent. And we can actually do that in reverse too. So if you do it back and forth, if there's simple formulas, Revit allows you to do that. Within that, we can also make these a little bit more complex. So let's say we always wanted a 2-to-1 ratio. Within that same dialog box, we can use divided by 2. And then you'll notice that BD length is now 1/2 of BD width. So BD width divided by 2, and you can really use any sort of math function here. We can also do times 2. Now you notice it's 8. So if we change this, it'll change to 4, go to 1, and really so on, and you can do this in reverse as well. So one thing to note when you're doing this is really sensitive. So with how you're naming your parameter, let's say if we didn't capitalize width and we just did that, we'll get this dialog box here saying that it's not a valid parameter. So the parameter name has to be exactly matching, case sensitive, spaces, everything. And one of the reasons that I don't name my parameters with like a dash, that actually, when you're doing these formulas, Revit actually just thinks you're trying to minus, do that minus function. So it just gets a little confusing. There are ways around that, but I just prefer to make it easy on myself. And if you wanted to name your parameter, a lot of times either use an underscore or a period, it works a lot better with our formula category. So another thing to notice here for consistency of unit, you'll notice that if I were to change this to a subtraction, Revit automatically adds this tick here, so that's for foot. So now if I were to come into here and change it to divide, we'll get this inconsistent units. So essentially why that's happening, we're changing essentially how this math equation is working. You just need to come in, remove that foot symbol, and then it will be fine. It'll work, how we had it working previously. So one other thing to note here, if we were to remove this, and then if we were to change this back to an instance parameter. So if we were to come in here and add this, so the type parameter is really the one within the formula. So the type parameter is controlling the instance parameter. That's acceptable, but if we were to remove this and then add that formula going from the instance parameter, and it's instance because it says default, we'll add this here. So essentially, you're not allowed to control a type parameter with an instance parameter. To get a little bit away from these dimension parameters, there are a lot of different parameters that we can add. So one that I always like to use is if you select the object and then in the properties dialog, you click on this little rectangle next to visible, you'll get associate family parameter. So we'll have to create a new parameter. And essentially what this is, it allows you to control whether or not this object is visible within the Revit space. So let's go ahead and we'll make that an instance parameter. and then we will group this under visibility. I like to do visibility, or there's a graphics group too. So we can click OK. Click OK. Now you'll see that there's a little equal symbol here. So it's equal to what that is. So we load this back in, overwrite, and then you'll come down, and since we did it as an instance parameter, it's going to be located just within our properties dialog box. So we unchecked it, and then now we can't see it. So essentially this is more useful for families that have multiple components in it. Let's say you had a door and you wanted to see the door handle. So that's a good example. For this, it doesn't make a ton of sense because it's the entire family, but there's loads of different use cases for this just in any real type of family. There's all sorts of different parameter types here. So there's simple text-based. So this is just if you wanted to add like a comment or a description. There's different number types, so integer, number, angle, so that's like the dimension, but just controls angle. Some more complex ones, speed, time, currency, things like that. URL, so if you wanted to add a URL for a manufacturer or add your own company URL. So let's go ahead and show this. So let's do text, and then we'll do another one. And then we'll go ahead and load this into the family. So the difference between these two, you can see here text, we just enter in text, and then it has, it's essentially just one long string. With multi-line text, you actually get this option, 3 dots here. You can enter, a lot more. You're allowed to enter down. So if you needed multiple lines, so it can be pretty useful, especially for like scheduling, or if you're doing addresses for particular things. It's really just a user interface thing. So there's loads of use cases that you might use it for. So now that we've gone through all the different parameter settings, we haven't really touched on the type, family type itself. So really what a family type is, it's those high level things that we went over at the beginning, but it allows you to, change certain things and then allows you to flex between those. So let's go ahead and rename this one. And you really want to name it kind of based off your type parameters. So what's really important here, let's say, is the width. So let's go ahead and call it 7-foot width. And then the height is also an important one. So we'll do 5-foot height, click OK. And now say we wanted a box of a different size. The reason we're not including length here is because it is an instance parameter. So that'll be controlled per instance. It's not, controlled within the actual type. So here, if we want to create a new type, click on this button here. And let's say we want to do, a cube, a square cube. Let's do 3'6". Okay. And then let's go ahead and change these, be 3'6". Click OK. Let's load this back into the project, overwrite the existing. And now if we come in here, you'll notice family 1, since we already had this loaded in the project, it's still going to be there. But let's go ahead and change these. So this is our cube. Previously, how we did, if we were to come in here, change this to 6, you can change the types within the project space. So click rename. You always want to make sure that however you're naming this is just congruent with the actual parameter settings. And unfortunately, there's no way to link those two things. So you just have to be on top of it if you are changing this stuff. Click apply. And so again, the only ones that changed were the ones that were already that type. So come here, our 3'6", not affected by what we did to this other family type. And one thing to note here, so we changed this within the project space. If we go back to our family editor, so you notice that that's still 7 foot. So these are acting independently now. They're not linked. So, it's not like an AutoCAD block reference. So it's its own thing. If we were to close out of this family, and then we were to click on this, and then if we want to edit the family, and then we come here, you'll notice that our settings are the settings that they were in the project space and not within that family space. So if we wanted to, we could save that other family as like our baseline and then access that later with the settings that we originally set. So that's nice. So if you have a company standard, but it needs to change specifically for one project, you have that ability to do that. And then if you want to get rid of kind of these defaults, click on this delete type button. So after the advanced parameter tutorial, you added serious horsepower to your Revit families. With formulas, visibility toggles, clean parametric logic, you've got everything you need to build content that's flexible, fast, and built to scale. Next up in BIM Depot's 5-part beginner series on Revit family creation, how to assign and control materials in your families, because great graphics matter just as much as performance. Does your firm need high-quality families that already follow these standards? Head to BIM Depot to browse our full library. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep building with us in future videos.